All right, buckle up because we're about to take a deep dive into a story that's way more than just code. It's about ambition, loss, and those crazy early days of computing.
I know, right?
We're going to be using excerpts from Bill Gates' own memoir
Oh, cool.
to trace his path from teenage programmer to, well, the Microsoft we all know. But we're not just hitting the highlights.
No.
We're going deep to see how some really specific things, like certain events and even relationships,
Right.
really shaped how things went down.
It's like, it's one thing to know the history, but it's so much more interesting to see it through the eyes of, like, someone who's actually there,
Right.
you know, at the heart of it all. It's
Yeah.
like a backstage pass to, like, the whole digital revolution.
Totally. So let's start with Bill and his buddy, Ken Evans. I mean, these guys were already hustling, showing some serious entrepreneurial spirit as teenagers,
Oh, yeah.
forming the Lakeside Programming Group in high school. I don't know about you, but I wasn't doing anything nearly that cool back then.
No, not even close. I mean, they weren't messing around either. They landed an actual client developing a payroll program.
And they even negotiated for computer time with a company called ISI.
Which is wild for high schoolers.
And that's where things get even more interesting. Bill's dad stepped in and taught them a pretty amazing lesson about negotiation.
Yeah, about thinking differently.
Because ISI wasn't really holding up their end of the bargain, you know, and you might think, oh, time for lawyers or something.
Yeah, it gets tough.
But Bill's dad, he took a completely different approach.
Real.
He just, calmly acknowledged ISI's perspective. And by doing that, he subtly but, totally shifted the whole power dynamic.
That's so smart.
It's like a masterclass in negotiation. Not forcing anything, but, changing the whole game.
Yeah.
You can definitely see how that kind of thinking would be valuable later on.
Oh, yeah. In the tech world, especially.
Cutthroat.
Yeah.
So these guys, Bill and Ken, were hungry. You know, they wanted to grow their business, even hired younger students as subcontractors. But their ambition wasn't always, how should I put this, perfectly ethical.
Ah, yeah. That line gets blurry sometimes.
Their attempt to resell ISI's computer time was kind of a gray area. It shows that drive, but it definitely raises questions about, well, where's the line?
Right. Ambition versus maybe pushing things a bit too far.
And that's something we still see a lot of today, even in the tech world.
Definitely.
Anyway, let's switch gears for a minute and talk about a challenge these guys faced that really put their skills to the test.
Okay.
It was at Lakeside, their school. Total scheduling chaos.
What happened?
So imagine a school merger, hundreds of students, and no automated system.
Oh, wow.
It was a logistical nightmare.
Oh, I bet.
Students in the wrong classes, schedules constantly changing, pandemonium.
Yikes.
But Bill and Kent saw this as an opportunity, a real-world problem they could solve with their coding skills.
I like it.
And they weren't playing around. This was what they called a complex, optimization problem. They dug into all this academic research, but ended up having to create their own solution.
That's impressive.
What's crazy is the pressure they were under.
Yeah. With all the school chaos.
It wasn't just a theoretical project for a grade or something. It was real.
And then didn't their teachers who were helping them die in a plane crash?
It's heartbreaking. Suddenly, it was so much more than a coding challenge.
Yeah.
Really personal. And they were determined to finish that scheduling program in their teacher's memory.
I can only imagine.
Working all day and night, sleeping at the computer lab.
Wow.
It shows a lot about their character, that drive.
Yeah, to see things through, even when things get really tough.
So this whole scheduling project, it really reveals Bill's work ethic, his resilience.
Right.
He was already using his skills to solve real problems.
Yeah.
But then another tragedy hit. This one affected Bill very personally.
Oh, no.
It involved Kent and his new passion, mountain climbing.
Mountain climbing.
It's interesting, right? Kent, the meticulous programmer, drawn to something so challenging and dangerous.
Makes you wonder what it was about climbing that appealed to him.
I know. Was it pushing his limits or maybe experiencing something totally different from coding?
Could be.
Maybe he found a sense of freedom up there, you know?
It's hard to say for sure, but sadly, it led to a terrible loss.
Kent died in a climbing accident on Mount Shuksun. It was a huge shock to Bill and everyone at Lakeside.
It makes you think about how quickly things can change. And for Bill, who had already lost his teachers, this must have been incredibly hard.
It must have been. How did he cope with all that grief?
Well, he immersed himself in work,
Of course.
focused on completing the scheduling program in Kent's honor. It's another example of his dedication. But he also needed someone else, a new partner.
To share the journey with.
Right.
And that's where Paul Allen comes in. He became Bill's new partner, offered support, and brought his own unique skills to the table.
How were they different?
Well, Paul was quieter, more thoughtful, which was actually a perfect balance to Bill's more assertive and fast-paced style.
It's like the classic dynamic duo, two halves of a whole.
It shows how differences in partnerships can be so powerful,
Yeah,
right?
sometimes you need someone who challenges you, brings a different way of seeing things.
And that partnership, it eventually led to Microsoft.
Wow.
But before we go there, let's talk about this one technology that really caught their attention.
Oh, what's that?
Microprocessors. Now remember, this is the early 70s. Computers were these massive machines.
Like room-sized.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Paul, he was obsessed with Intel's new microprocessors, especially the 4004 and the 808. He saw the potential for small, affordable computers, the kind everyday people could use.
That's amazing to have that vision so early on.
I know. Most people back then thought computers were only for scientists and big companies, but Bill, he wasn't totally convinced at first, was he?
What did he think?
Well, he was skeptical, thought the chips weren't powerful enough.
It's funny how even brilliant people can underestimate new tech, right?
It happens. But then they realized the 808 could be used for their traffic counting project. A practical application for this brand new technology.
It all clicked.
Exactly. They needed to analyze data from traffic sensors really quickly, and the 808 could handle it. So they decided to take a chance and bought this expensive 808 chip.
That was a big decision.
It was a pivotal moment. Most people saw this tech as a toy, but they were betting on it.
We were holding a piece of the future, basically.
It really shows their foresight, their willingness to take a risk, and it was a key step towards Microsoft. But that's a story for next time. So last time we left Bill and Paul holding that Intel 808 chip, excited about microprocessors and all that. But even the best ideas, they don't always, take off right away.
Right. There were definitely bumps in the road. And remember, they were still teenagers, basically. More enthusiasm than actual experience. Yeah. And their first try at building a traffic counting computer with that 808, well, it didn't go exactly as planned.
What happened? Did the technology just not work out?
It wasn't really the tech itself. It was more, how should I put it? The whole project was just really complex. They had the concept, but actually building a computer from scratch.
Yeah.
That's a huge undertaking, even for brilliant guys like them.
It is.
They were pioneers, really.
So they had this cutting-edge microprocessor.
Right.
But not really the know-how to build the rest.
Exactly. Plus, think about it. This was the early 70s. The kind of resources developers have now, the information, it just didn't exist.
So how'd they figure it out? Did they get someone else involved?
They did. They reached out to an old friend, Paul Gilbert, from their computer club days.
Okay.
Gilbert was studying electrical engineering at the University of Washington.
So he had access to
labs, equipment, stuff Bill and Paul needed.
It's amazing how networking can help, even in tech.
Yep.
So did they get the traffic counting computer working with Gilbert's help?
They did make a prototype, but it wasn't, the elegant machine they'd imagined.
I guess it's one thing to have the idea and another to actually make it work perfectly in real life.
Totally. And this taught them a lot about, real technical expertise and how important collaboration is.
So what happened to the traffic counting computer? Did they keep working on it?
They decided to kind of put it on the back burner, figured their time was better spent elsewhere. It was a strategic pivot,
Makes sense. Got to know when to move on, especially with tech changing so fast. So what do they do next?
Well, around that time, Paul Allen got a job at Honeywell in Boston.
Okay.
Good fit for him with his hardware interests. But they stayed in touch, Bill and Paul, still brainstorming.
Even though they were in different cities.
Oh, yeah. And they were really intrigued by mini computers.
Mini computers.
Smaller, cheaper than the mainframes everyone was using. They saw a need for software to make those mini computers easier to use.
They were like a stepping stone, right?
Yeah.
Towards the PCs we have now.
Exactly. And Bill and Paul, they were right there seeing that potential early on.
So how did they get into that market?
Well, their big chance came with a company called TRW.
TRW.
Major tech company. They were expanding in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Needed programmers for a bunch of projects.
Albuquerque. That's a bit random.
It was all about opportunity. TRW was a leader with mini computers, and they were willing to, take a chance on young talent.
So off they went to the desert.
Ready for a new challenge.
It was a pretty big move. New city, tough job.
Yeah.
But it was more than just a job for them.
Definitely not. It was a chance to learn, build their skills.
So they were in Albuquerque working at TRW, but still thinking about starting their own thing.
Oh yeah, that entrepreneurial spirit never went away. Always tinkering with side projects, new ideas.
Like sponges, soaking it all up.
It was a crucial time for them. Their partnership grew stronger.
Yeah.
And their vision for, well, the future of computing, it really started to solidify.
But even with TRW, it sounds like something was still missing.
Like they were meant for more.
Last time, we left Bill and Paul in Albuquerque, working away at TRW. But we know they had bigger dreams, right? Always that entrepreneurial spirit bubbling under the surface.
And the thing is, the perfect opportunity. It kind of came out of left field. Remember that Intel 8008 chip?
Yeah.
Well, it was about to become way more important than they ever thought.
Okay, so we've got this new tech, two super ambitious programmers. What was the spark that set everything in motion?
The Altair 8800. Years 1973, a company called MIT releases what's basically considered one of the first, personal computers anyone could buy.
Crazy, right? Because back then, computers were these giant, expensive things.
Yeah, for governments and stuff.
Exactly. So the idea of a personal computer, it was revolutionary.
It's wild to think how different things were. Today, we don't even think twice about PCs. But that Altair, it was like a glimpse into the future.
Totally.
What did Bill and Paul see in it, though? Potential. Plain and simple. They knew the Altair 8800, as cool as it was still basically an empty shell.
Mm-hmm.
It needed software, the right software, to really make it sing. Mm-hmm. And that's where they stepped in.
So they saw a gap in the market and they went for it. Did they go to MIT? Like, hey, we'll make software for your thing.
They did. But not exactly like that. They actually convinced Emmis they already had a basic interpreter for the Altair ready to go.
Whoa, hold on. They didn't though, right?
Nope. Hadn't written a line of code for it.
That's a serious bluff. It takes guts to promise something like that when you're starting from zero.
They knew they could do it. They had the skills, the vision, plus timing is everything, right?
Mm.
The PC market was just getting started. They had to move fast.
It was a gamble, but a smart one. 8 weeks to make good on their promise. So did they manage to pull it off?
Oh, they did. Bill and Paul working like crazy day and night to create that basic interpreter. And remember, this wasn't like today. No fancy tools, no internet for help. They were figuring it out as they went.
Pushing the limits.
Exactly. It shows how dedicated they were, how much they believed in what they were doing. It was more than just making software. It was about shaping the future. So they brought the basic interpreter to Emmites.
What'd they think?
Emmites was blown away. They saw how powerful it was and offered them a deal. That handshake right there, that was the birth of Microsoft.
It's incredible, from that high school club to, changing how computers worked. What's something we can learn from all this?
I think it shows how important vision is, being determined, but also willing to take those smart risks. And being adaptable, too. They weren't originally aiming for PCs. It was mini computers at first. But when the chance with the Altair came up, they jumped on it.
And they weren't afraid to make a bold move or two, like that bluff. But they always backed it up with hard work.
Exactly. It's like sometimes you got to fake it till you make it, as long as you're willing to put in the effort to actually make it happen.
But beyond all the tech skills, the business stuff, they had something else that was really important: their partnership.
Right. How different they were actually helped. Bill, with all his drive, Paul was more thoughtful, the tech expert. They challenged each other, made each other better.
That's something to think about, right? Finding the right people to work with, people who balance you out. This whole deep dive has been amazing, from Lakeside all the way to Microsoft being born. And the thing is, they were so young when all this happened, barely in their 20s.
Imagine that feeling, knowing they were right at the start of this massive change in technology.
Holding that Altair, knowing they were part of something huge.
Must have been both exciting and a little scary, I bet. Their story shows us that even the biggest, most world-changing things, they often start small. It's about passion, creativity, believing in an idea. And who knows, maybe listening to this will get you thinking, get you inspired. Maybe you'll explore some new tech, learn a new skill, even start your own thing.
The future's still being written. There's room for everyone to be part of it.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Maybe someday we'll be doing a deep dive